This is part 11 of our 12-part series of reminiscences in history. And today I'd like to talk about the 9/11 attack on the World Trade Center towers in New York City on September 11th, 2001. I remember getting up that morning as I usually did. It was a Tuesday morning, and I turned on my computer, America Online, to get the emails. And the top story breaking news bulletin, they showed a picture of the Twin Towers in New York City, and one of them had smoke coming out of it. And at that time, they just said that there was a fire. A fire was reported on the World Trade Center tower, one of the two towers. And there was no mention of planes crashing into it or any sort of terrorist attack. So I went and showered and got dressed to get ready to go to work, to go teaching. And meanwhile, my wife was getting my daughter up and ready to go to school, and I would be dropping her off at school. So I had left the computer on, and when I came back into the room, they said a airplane had struck the second tower, and then there were reports now that there was a different airplane that had hit the first tower. So we went into the living room and turned on the television, and we started to watch everything on TV. And still, it seemed like it was an accidental thing, not a deliberate terrorist attack. But around 7 a.m., our time here in California, we saw live on TV the first tower completely collapse. And my immediate thought was, oh my God, all of those hundreds, if not thousands of people that were in that tower were all killed. There's no way anyone could survive something like that. But I had to get ready to go to work. I had students waiting for me and had to get my daughter to school. So we got in the car. I took her first to Maryhill School. She was just short of being 8 years old at the time. So it must have been second grade. And then I continued to work on my way to work, listening to the radio the whole time. And then around just before 7:30 in the morning, the second tower collapsed. And I heard that on the radio and thought, oh my God. And I got out and went into the teacher's lounge, and all the teachers were talking about what was happening, and people had heard it on the radio or had seen it, some of it on television. And it was going to be a really hard day at school. I could just sense it. And so I had to pick up my students, my fifth grade class, there at the regular time, 7:47 a.m. Some of the kids had also seen it on television or heard it on the radio. And at this time, news was coming out that it was airplanes had hit the towers, and that it was possible that it was a deliberate attack because 4 airliners had been hijacked, and that was reported on the news, and they're thinking that 2 of the 4 planes had been involved in this. Whether it was deliberate or an accident at this point was sort of unknown. But my main job was to calm down my students and assure them that we were on the other side of the United States, and at this point there was nothing that was going to be harming us or hurting us or their parents. There was no talk of anything going on the West Coast. So the day was a very odd day because we had to continue business as usual, but I did have my radio in my room, and every hour I would turn the radio on for a few minutes while the kids were working, and I said, you can also listen to it if you'd like. And then as reports started to trickle in, we heard that the Pentagon had been hit by an airplane. And at this point, they were saying that this was we were under attack, and this was the only the second time we were attacked in modern history on American soil, the first being Pearl Harbor in 1941. And that made everybody kind of really scared and really heightened awareness. And then there was another airplane, United Flight 93, that had crashed into the ground, and later we found out that the passengers had bravely overcome the terrorists, and I believe they were headed for the White House or the Capitol building, and they helped get the plane diverted, and unfortunately all of those people were killed when that plane crashed and went into the ground, I believe in Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, all air traffic was now grounded for the first time in U.S. history. So all airplanes had to land. They got all the airplanes down out of the ground except for military planes. President Bush was in Florida at the time at an elementary school, so they immediately got him out of there and put him in a secret location. And things just kept getting stranger and stranger, and my whole thought during the day was I just want to get the day done with the students, get them dismissed, and get home, pick up my daughter, be with my wife and daughter, and just sort of see how events would continue to unfold. And so that's what happened, and of course it was on all the news channels, round-the-clock coverage, and then President Bush himself addressed the nation and specifically came out and said that there was a terrorist attack, that we were under attack, and that they were determining who was responsible, and so on and so forth. Other countries came to the United States' support at this time. All of our friends and allies around the world expressed their concerns and offered their help, particularly Canada and our allies and so forth in Europe and around the world. So it was a very scary type of a day. And then for weeks and months and every year since, on the anniversary of that date, people remember the horrors of that whole event, this sneak attack by terrorists from the Middle East. And then 11 months later, in August of 2002, my two friends and I, Rick McKay and Joe Masonic, went to New York City to go to the ground zero area where the towers had collapsed. And at this point, 99% of the rubble had been cleared away, along with the almost 3,000 dead bodies that had been killed during the tower collapse. And you could still see in the area around it pittings on the stones of the surrounding buildings. And we saw the memorial to the dead at St. Paul's Chapel, which was right next to the World Trade Center and miraculously was not damaged when these two giant towers fell. And when I saw the crater where the buildings once stood, it was just amazing how large this was. It was sort of like 4 city blocks in a square that had just completely gone away. So seeing that up close was just amazing, and I'll never forget that as long as I live. So those are my memories of that terrible day of the 9/11 tragedy.